Hey guys, tonight we're traveling somewhere your weather app would simply label, absolutely not. Not because of monsters. Not because of war. Not because you're about to face a legendary Viking with an axe the size of a canoe. No. Tonight, your greatest enemy is the air itself. The kind of cold that quietly sneaks into your boots, climbs up your legs, settles into your bones, and politely informs you that spring is still 4 months away. You've probably heard all the usual stories about Vikings. Fearless warriors. Dragon-headed longships. Massive beards that somehow survived without conditioner. People who thought sailing directly into freezing storms sounded like a perfectly reasonable Tuesday afternoon. But here's something most history books barely mention. Many Viking families lived through brutal northern winters without the kind of fireplace you're imagining. No cozy stone chimney. No roaring living room fire. No thermostat waiting for you to complain that 70 degrees somehow feels chilly. Instead, a smoky little hearth. A house built like an upside-down wooden boat. Several farm animals acting as accidental space heaters. And enough wool clothing to make a modern sheep file a lawsuit. Believe it or not, it worked. Most of the time. So before we begin tonight's journey, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy these slow history adventures. I'd also love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Some of you are probably tucked into bed. Some of you are pretending to sleep while secretly watching YouTube. And a few of you are probably listening while it's snowing outside. If that's you, congratulations. You're already getting into character. Now, dim the lights. Get comfortable. Maybe turn on a fan or some soft rain sounds if that's your thing. Take one slow breath. Then another. And let's quietly wander into one of the coldest places most people have ever willingly called home. It begins with the sound of snow crunching beneath your boots. The first thing you notice isn't the snow. It's the silence. Not the peaceful kind you hear after fresh snowfall back home. This silence feels older. Heavier. As though the entire landscape has agreed to save its energy until spring. You stand ankle-deep, then knee-deep, in powdery snow somewhere near the Arctic Circle in the late 9th century. The sky hangs low above you, a sheet of dull gray that seems to swallow every bit of sunlight before it ever reaches the ground. The daylight is brief, weak, and already beginning to fade, even though it feels like the afternoon should have only just begun. Your first breath is a mistake. The air is so cold it almost stings. It rushes into your lungs like tiny frozen needles before escaping as a cloud of white vapor. You instinctively pull your modern jacket tighter around yourself. Then you remember. You aren't wearing a modern jacket. You're wrapped in layers of coarse wool, a heavy fur cloak, leather boots stuffed with dried grass for insulation, and gloves that somehow manage to keep your fingers equally warm and uncomfortable. Fashion has officially surrendered. Survival 1. The wind doesn't roar. It whispers. Which somehow makes it worse. It slips through every tiny gap in your clothing with the confidence of an uninvited guest who somehow knows where you keep the spare key. Ahead of you, scattered across a gentle hillside, sits a Viking settlement. It's smaller than you imagined. Hollywood probably owes you an apology. There are no towering castles. No giant halls gleaming with polished stone. No dramatic orchestra announcing your arrival. Just several longhouses nestled into the snowy landscape as if they're trying not to be noticed. And honestly, that's exactly what they're doing. Everything here is built to survive winter, not impress strangers. The buildings sit low to the ground. Their thick turf-covered roofs blend into the surrounding hills so naturally that, from a distance, they almost disappear beneath the snow. It's less like looking at a village. And more like watching the earth quietly breathe. Smoke drifts lazily from small openings along the roofline. Not thick black clouds. Just thin ribbons curling into the pale sky before the wind steals them away. You expected tall stone chimneys. Instead, the smoke seems almost embarrassed to leave the house. As you slowly make your way toward the settlement, your boots crunch rhythmically through the snow. Each step takes more effort than the last. Walking through deep snow looks graceful in holiday movies. It isn't. After 5 minutes, you're already wondering whether lying down and becoming a decorative snowdrift might actually be easier. Off to your left, several reindeer wander across the frozen landscape, digging through the snow with practiced movements to reach patches of moss hidden underneath. They don't hurry. Nothing here hurries. Winter lasts too long to waste energy. Near one of the buildings, a few shaggy cattle stand shoulder to shoulder, facing away from the wind. From a distance they resemble one enormous furry creature that simply hasn't decided where one cow ends and the next begins. They're conserving heat. So is everyone else. Every movement has purpose. Every calorie matters. Back home, you might wander into the kitchen just because you're bored. Here, walking 50 unnecessary steps means burning precious energy that you'll eventually need to replace with food. Food that isn't exactly growing on trees. Mostly because the trees are frozen. And because it's winter. You finally reach the largest longhouse. The entrance surprises you. The doorway is remarkably small. You almost laugh. Surely Vikings, legendary warriors feared across Europe, didn't squeeze through tiny doors like this. They absolutely did. The low entrance isn't poor design. It's brilliant engineering. Every time the door opens, less warm air escapes. Cold air has to work harder to force its way inside. Winter is clever. The Vikings simply became cleverer. You bend down. Duck your head. And step inside. Warmth greets you. Well, warmth might be a generous word. Let's call it less freezing. Compared with the brutal wind outside, the difference feels remarkable. Compared with your living room back home, you'd still keep your coat on. The interior is dim. Your eyes take a moment to adjust. The walls are built from thick wooden timbers. Massive support posts disappear into the darkness overhead, holding up a roof packed with layers of birch bark, timber, earth, and heavy sod. That roof isn't simply keeping the snow out. It's trapping every tiny bit of heat the family can create. You immediately notice another surprise. The house smells complicated. Wood smoke. Wet wool. Animal hides. Cooking stew. Damp earth. Old timber. A hint of sheep. Quite a lot of sheep, actually. It's not unpleasant. It's simply honest. This is the smell of people surviving winter. Right in the center of the room sits a shallow hearth. Not a towering fireplace. Not an enormous roaring blaze. Just a modest fire quietly burning inside a stone-lined pit. The flames dance gently beneath an iron cooking pot suspended above them. The fire isn't trying to heat the entire building. That would be impossible. Its job is much simpler. Cook food. Provide light. Dry clothing. Keep people alive. Anything beyond that is considered a welcome bonus. You instinctively shuffle closer. One side of your face becomes pleasantly warm. The other side continues negotiating directly with the Arctic. You slowly rotate every few moments like a chicken on a spit, trying to warm each shoulder equally without looking too ridiculous. No one seems to notice. Or perhaps everyone does exactly the same thing. And after a few minutes, you realize they do. Every person in the room quietly changes position now and then, giving each side of their body a chance to meet the fire. It's a slow dance performed every winter for generations. No music required. Only patience. A child notices you first. Not with surprise. More with the quiet curiosity reserved for someone wearing their boots on the wrong feet. He studies you for a moment, then returns to stirring the pot hanging over the fire as if mysterious strangers wandering in from frozen wilderness are simply another part of winter. You decide not to take it personally. Across the room, an older woman sits on a wooden bench, her hands moving with remarkable speed despite the cold. A bone needle slips in and out of thick wool fabric, repairing a cloak that has clearly lived through more winters than most people ever will. Every stitch matters. Nothing here gets thrown away. A torn sleeve becomes a patch. A worn blanket becomes mittens. A broken leather strap becomes bootlaces. Even scraps too small to wear might find a second life stuffed into bedding or wrapped around tools. Modern closets are full of clothes people forgot they owned. A Viking household owns exactly what it needs. And every single piece has a job. Your attention shifts toward the far end of the longhouse. At first, you think the shadows are moving. Then one of them snorts. A cow. Actually, several cows. They're standing behind a low wooden partition, calmly chewing their dinner while occasionally looking in your direction with the unmistakable expression of animals who have already accepted that humans are very strange creatures. You blink. The animals are inside the house. Yes. Inside. Sleeping under the same roof as the family. It sounds unusual today. To the people living here, it makes perfect sense. Outside, temperatures can plunge far below freezing for weeks at a time. Keeping valuable livestock alive through winter isn't just important. It's everything. A healthy cow in spring means milk. Calves. Leather. Trade. Food. A dead cow means months of hardship. So everyone shares the building. People on one side. Animals on the other. Not because they're especially sentimental. Because they're practical. There's another benefit. Every large animal gives off body heat. Not enough to make the room cozy. But enough to help. A handful of cattle and sheep quietly breathing through the night create warmth that would otherwise disappear into the frozen darkness outside. Nature, for once, agrees to help. Even if she charges rent in the form of a very distinctive smell. You hear another sound. A deep sigh. At your feet, curled tightly beside the hearth, lies an enormous dog. Its thick fur is dusted with tiny flecks of ash. One sleepy eye opens. The dog studies you carefully. Apparently deciding you don't resemble a wolf, it yawns so dramatically that you're slightly offended on behalf of everyone trying to stay awake. Then it curls back into a perfect circle. Mission accomplished. The room settles into quiet routine. Nobody rushes. Nobody wastes movement. One man carefully sharpens a small knife. Another patiently twists wool into thread. A teenage girl gently combs raw fleece with two wooden paddles lined with iron teeth. Children whisper instead of shouting. Even conversation seems designed to conserve energy. Winter teaches discipline. Not because anyone enjoys being quiet. Because shouting burns calories. You move toward an empty bench near the fire. The wood creaks softly beneath your weight. Almost immediately, someone hands you a wooden bowl. No ceremony. No speeches. No awkward introductions. Just food. Hospitality in its simplest form. The stew is thick. Not luxurious. Not beautifully seasoned. But wonderfully hot. Steam rises slowly into the smoky air. You blow across the surface before taking a careful sip. It tastes of barley. Turnips. A little cabbage. Perhaps onions. Some herbs gathered months ago before snow covered everything. There's meat too. Not much. Just enough to remind the soup that animals exist. Nothing goes to waste. Every ingredient has been stretched as far as possible. Calories are precious. Flavor is appreciated. Survival wins every argument. You quickly discover something else. Nobody eats quickly. Meals last. Conversation flows slowly between spoonfuls. The fire crackles quietly. Outside, the wind scratches against the walls. Inside, life continues one careful moment at a time. As your fingers slowly regain feeling, you glance upward. The ceiling disappears into darkness. Thick wooden beams cross overhead like the ribs of an enormous ship turned upside down. In many ways, that's exactly what this building resembles. The same people who built ships strong enough to cross the North Atlantic also understood how to build homes capable of standing against Arctic winters. Strong timber. Flexible construction. Everything designed to endure. You begin noticing little details. Bundles of dried herbs hang from roof beams. Fish dry near the smoke. Tools rest neatly along the walls. Wooden chests serve as benches during the day and storage through the night. Nothing decorative. Everything useful. Space inside a longhouse is valuable. Every object earns its place. You instinctively glance toward the fire again. It still seems small. Your modern brain refuses to accept it. Surely they needed something bigger. Something powerful enough to heat the whole room. The answer is surprisingly simple. No. Heating the air wasn't the goal. Keeping people warm was. There's a difference. Instead of wasting enormous amounts of wood trying to create summer indoors, the Vikings focused on trapping heat close to their bodies. Layers of wool. Heavy fur cloaks. Shared sleeping spaces. Animal skin spread across wooden platforms. Thick blankets stuffed with feathers. People sleeping close together beneath several layers of bedding. Not because they lacked imagination. Because physics is stubborn. It's easier to keep people warm than an entire building. And firewood. Well, firewood doesn't magically appear. Every log must be cut. Split. Carried. Dried. Stored. Protected from moisture. Then burned carefully over months of winter. A roaring fire may look impressive. But it also disappears into smoke surprisingly fast. The Vikings understood something modern life often lets us forget. Resources are finite. Comfort has limits. Waste can become deadly. You quietly finish the last spoonful of stew. Warmth spreads through your chest. Outside. The sun has already vanished. Night arrives early here. Very early. And it's going to be a very long one. Night settles over the settlement without much warning. The last traces of daylight quietly disappear. The world outside turns blue, then black. You expect people to sleep soon. They don't. Winter nights are long. There is still work to finish. One man adds another small log to the hearth. Not 2 logs. Not 3. Just 1. Fuel must last until spring. Every piece of firewood has value. You watch the flames grow brighter. Only for a moment. Then they settle again. Nobody seems disappointed. A roaring fire would waste precious wood. A steady fire keeps everyone alive. The room glows with soft orange light. Shadows move across the timber walls. Smoke drifts upward before escaping through the roof vent. Some of it stays behind. Your eyes still sting a little. Everyone else seems perfectly comfortable. Years of practice make a difference. A young girl carries another armful of wool. She sits beside her grandmother. Neither speaks very much. Their hands do all the talking. Thread becomes cloth. Cloth becomes clothing. Clothing becomes another chance to survive winter. Across the room, someone begins repairing leather boots. Every stitch could matter next month. A cracked boot invites frostbite. No one takes that risk. You glance toward the animals again. The cattle barely move. Their slow breathing fills the quiet room. Their warmth spreads little by little. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't need to be. Small advantages matter here. The great Viking secret isn't endless strength. It's patience. They prepare before winter arrives. Then they refuse to panic after it begins. You slowly realize something surprising. Nobody here is fighting the cold. They're simply living beside it. That may be the smartest lesson winter ever teaches. Outside, the wind grows louder. Inside, another peaceful evening continues. Tomorrow will look almost exactly the same. And somehow, that's exactly why this community survives. You begin to notice the sleeping platforms. They line both sides of the longhouse. Each platform sits slightly above the floor. That small height makes a difference. Cold air settles lower. Warmer air stays a little higher. It's simple. But it works. Animal skins cover the wooden frames. Wool blankets rest on top. Some are patched many times. None are wasted. Several family members will share each sleeping space. Privacy isn't part of daily life. Warmth is. Sharing body heat saves energy. It also saves firewood. You think about your king-sized bed back home. It suddenly feels like an unbelievable luxury. An elderly man quietly laughs. Perhaps he notices your expression. Or perhaps he's remembering his own first winter. The fire burns lower. Nobody rushes to feed it. The glowing coals provide enough warmth for now. Someone places a heavy iron pot closer to the embers. Tomorrow's breakfast has already begun cooking. Nothing here is done at the last minute. Winter rewards preparation. It punishes carelessness. Outside, snow taps gently against the roof. The thick layer above acts like insulation. Snow isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it becomes another blanket. The longhouse creaks softly. Strong timbers flex against the cold. They've done this for many winters. And they'll likely survive many more. You pull your wool cloak tighter. For the first time today, you stop thinking about leaving. The room isn't comfortable. It isn't luxurious. Yet it feels safe. Out there, winter waits without mercy. In here, careful planning keeps everyone alive. That quiet difference means everything. You finally understand. The Vikings didn't survive because they feared nothing. They survived because they respected nature every single day. Hours pass without anyone noticing. Time moves differently during winter. The darkness hides every clock. Only the fire marks each passing hour. A woman quietly checks the cooking pot. She stirs it with a wooden spoon. Nothing is wasted. Tomorrow's meal grows richer overnight. The children begin to yawn. One by one, they climb onto the sleeping platforms. Nobody complains about bedtime. The long day has taken its toll. Parents pull thick wool blankets over them. A few moments later, the children are asleep. The adults keep working. There are fishing nets to repair. Leather straps need replacing. A broken tool waits for careful hands. Winter gives people time. They use every minute wisely. You glance toward the doorway again. The wind still whistles outside. Inside, the fire glows quietly. Its light flickers across weathered faces. These people rarely speak about bravery. They simply live it. Every single day. You rub your hands together. The warmth returns slowly. Your boots finally begin to dry. The room feels smaller now. Not because it changed. Because everyone has gathered closer together. The longhouse becomes a single living heartbeat. Every person depends on another. No one survives alone here. You lower your voice without thinking. The quiet almost asks for it. Outside lies endless winter. Inside lives something stronger. Community. And tonight, that may be the warmest thing in the entire north. A faint sound breaks the silence. Someone opens the door. A blast of icy air sweeps across the room. Every head turns. The cold arrives like an unwanted guest. The door closes quickly. The warmth slowly returns. A young man stamps snow from his boots. His beard is covered with tiny crystals. His eyelashes sparkle with frost. He carries a bundle of split firewood. Not a large pile. Just enough for another day. Wood is never taken for granted. Someone thanks him with a quiet nod. Words are saved when actions say enough. He stacks each log beside the hearth. Every piece is dry. Every piece was prepared months earlier. You suddenly understand something important. Winter survival doesn't begin in winter. It begins during summer. While the days were long, families chopped trees. They split logs. They carried heavy loads. They stacked wood beneath covered shelters. Every hour of hard work became tomorrow's warmth. Miss those months of preparation. And winter would collect the debt. You imagine forgetting to gather enough firewood. The thought alone feels terrifying. No delivery trucks. No hardware stores. No emergency heating service. Only snow. Only darkness. Only the choices made before the first frost. The lesson feels surprisingly modern. Preparation often looks boring. Until the day it saves your life. The fire crackles softly. Outside, the wind keeps searching for a way inside. It never finds one. The old longhouse quietly holds its ground. And so do the people living within it. Hours pass without anyone noticing. Time moves differently during winter. The darkness hides every clock. Only the fire marks each passing hour. A woman quietly checks the cooking pot. She stirs it with a wooden spoon. Nothing is wasted. Tomorrow's meal grows richer overnight. The children begin to yawn. One by one, they climb onto the sleeping platforms. Nobody complains about bedtime. The long day has taken its toll. Parents pull thick wool blankets over them. A few moments later, the children are asleep. The adults keep working. There are fishing nets to repair. Leather straps need replacing. A broken tool waits for careful hands. Winter gives people time. They use every minute wisely. You glance toward the doorway again. The wind still whistles outside. Inside, the fire glows quietly. Its light flickers across weathered faces. These people rarely speak about bravery. They simply live it. Every single day. You rub your hands together. The warmth returns slowly. Your boots finally begin to dry. The room feels smaller now. Not because it changed. Because everyone has gathered closer together. The longhouse becomes a single living heartbeat. Every person depends on another. No one survives alone here. You lower your voice without thinking. The quiet almost asks for it. Outside lies endless winter. Inside lives something stronger. Community. And tonight, that may be the warmest thing in the entire north. You lean back against one of the thick timber posts and simply listen. The longhouse has its own rhythm. The fire crackles. The cattle breathe. A child murmurs in a dream. Somewhere above, the wind brushes across the sod roof with a soft, steady whisper. None of the sounds compete. Together, they become the soundtrack of another Viking winter night. Your eyes wander around the room again. In the gentle firelight, you begin noticing details you missed before. Wooden bowls are stacked neatly beside a storage chest. Iron cooking tools hang from pegs driven into the beams. Bundles of dried herbs sway slightly whenever the door opens. Nothing looks expensive. Nothing looks decorative. Everything has earned its place. A middle-aged man carefully lifts the lid from a large wooden barrel. Inside are dried fish packed with salt. Next to it sits another barrel filled with smoked meat. A smaller container holds grain. This is the family's true treasure. Not gold. Not silver. Food. A wealthy Viking could own beautiful jewelry. But during a hard winter, preserved food mattered far more than polished metal. You imagine opening your own kitchen cabinets back home. Fresh fruit. Cold drinks. Frozen pizza. Coffee. Maybe even ice cream. The thought almost makes you laugh. Here, every meal represents months of planning. Fishing during the warmer seasons. Hunting whenever opportunity appeared. Drying fish in the cool northern air. Smoking meat above slow fires. Gathering berries before the first frost. Storing grain where mice could not reach it. Nothing happened by accident. Every successful winter began many months earlier. Across the room, the older woman finishes repairing the heavy wool cloak. She runs her fingers across the fresh stitching. Satisfied, she folds it carefully and places it beside the sleeping platform. It will almost certainly need another repair next winter. And probably the winter after that. Good clothing is expected to last for years. Replacing it isn't simple. Creating wool fabric takes incredible effort. First the sheep must be raised. Then sheared. The wool must be cleaned. Carded. Spun into thread. Woven into cloth. Finally, someone cuts and sews each piece by hand. A single cloak represents countless hours of work. Suddenly, you understand why nobody here throws anything away. Even the smallest scrap has value. Outside, snow continues falling quietly. No one bothers looking through the doorway. Tomorrow will almost certainly look exactly like today. Another cold morning. Another careful fire. Another shared meal. Another day survived. And here in the far north. That's more than enough. Strict, safe. Extra. The fire has burned lower now. Only glowing coals remain. The light turns softer, almost sleepy. Shadows stretch longer across the longhouse walls. Everything feels slower than before. Even breathing seems quieter. You notice a man sitting near the fire sharpening a small blade. His movements are calm and steady. No rush. No wasted motion. Every stroke against the stone is controlled. Sharp tools are survival tools here. A dull knife is a dangerous problem. Another man checks the doorway again. Snow has built up outside. He pushes it aside with his boot. A cold gust slips in for a moment. Everyone ignores it. They are used to it by now. The longhouse simply accepts the winter. Like it always has. You pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders. The wool feels heavy but warm. It smells faintly of smoke and animal fur. Not pleasant. But familiar to everyone here. A woman quietly adds more straw under a sleeping mat. Straw is replaced often. Moisture is the enemy. Cold and damp together can be deadly. So everything stays dry if possible. A child shifts in sleep and curls closer to a parent. No one moves him. Everyone understands. Warmth is shared automatically. Across the room, a dog lifts its head again. It listens for a moment. Then relaxes. Nothing dangerous outside tonight. Only wind. Only snow. Only the endless winter pressing against the walls. The fire finally settles into a deep orange glow. It no longer flames high. It only holds on. Just enough light to see. Just enough heat to survive. You realize something slowly. This place is not about comfort. It is about balance. Heat and cold. Work and rest. Life and winter. Everything measured carefully. Nothing wasted. You sit still for a moment longer. The room feels steady now. Almost like it is breathing with you. Outside, the Arctic night continues without end. Inside, life quietly refuses to stop. The night deepens further. Inside the longhouse, the fire is now almost entirely coals. A soft red glow spreads across the floor like fading memory. Most people are lying down now. The day's work is finished. Only quiet remains. You notice how naturally everyone settles into place. No one announces bedtime. No one gives instructions. Bodies simply know when to stop. A man lies on one side of the sleeping platform, boots still on. He keeps them close. Even in sleep, preparation matters. Someone else pulls a thick wool blanket over their shoulders. The fabric is rough but heavy. It traps warmth like a shield. Near the fire, a kettle still hangs. Inside, leftover stew continues to warm slowly. Nothing is rushed here. Even food sleeps with the people. A faint creak runs through the wooden beams above. The structure adjusts itself to the cold. Expansion and contraction are constant. The house is alive in its own quiet way. You close your eyes for a moment. The smoke smell is still strong. It clings to everything. Your hair. Your clothes. Even your thoughts. But somehow, it feels less uncomfortable now. More like part of the place. A child whispers something in sleep. A parent gently responds without fully waking. Words are rare, but connection is constant. Outside, the wind increases for a moment. It presses against the walls like it wants in. The longhouse does not respond. It has heard this before. Thousands of times. And it is still standing. You begin to understand something deeper. Survival here is not dramatic. There are no heroic moments every hour. Just small decisions repeated perfectly. Fire kept low but steady. Food stored carefully. Clothes repaired instead of replaced. People staying close. Heat shared. Cold ignored. Time moves slowly, but nothing is wasted. Your body finally relaxes. The floor beneath you feels firm and safe. The warmth is not strong, but it is enough. Enough to sleep. Enough to make it through another night. Outside this wooden shelter, winter continues endlessly. But inside, life quietly holds on. The longhouse has gone almost completely quiet now. Only the fire is still alive. Even that feels tired, like it's saving its last strength for the cold outside. You lie down on the sleeping platform. The wood beneath you is hard. But it is steady. Reliable. That matters more than comfort here. Around you, people are already asleep. Their breathing rises and falls in slow rhythm. Like waves you can't see, only feel. Somewhere outside, the wind hits the walls again. It sounds distant. Almost uninterested. Like it knows it cannot win tonight. You pull the wool blanket higher. It scratches slightly against your skin. But it holds warmth better than anything you've ever owned back home. Your modern world feels far away now. Phones. Heaters. Soft mattresses. They all seem like a different kind of life. Not better. Just different. Here, everything has weight. Everything has cost. Even sleep feels earned. The fire gives one last soft pop. A small spark rises and disappears into smoke. After that, the light weakens further. The room slips deeper into shadow. But no one wakes. No one checks. They trust it. You realize that trust is everywhere here. Trust in the walls. Trust in the fire. Trust in the people beside you. And trust that winter will pass, eventually. Your eyes grow heavy. The cold is still there, pressing at the edges of the house. But it no longer feels threatening. It feels distant. Like something held back by careful hands. Your breathing slows. The sounds of the longhouse fade into one steady hum. Fire. Wind. Sleep. All blending together. And just before you drift off completely, you understand one simple truth. They didn't survive the Arctic by fighting it. They survived by living with it. Morning doesn't arrive in the Viking world like it does back home. There's no bright sunrise to announce the day. Just a slow shift in darkness. From black to gray to something barely brighter than memory. Inside the longhouse, people begin waking one by one. Not all at once. No alarm. No schedule. Just bodies responding to cold and habit. The fire is still alive. Barely. A few glowing coals remain under ash. Someone carefully adds a thin piece of wood. Not too much. Never too much. The flame slowly returns. Like it was waiting for permission. You sit up slowly. Your back feels stiff from the wooden platform. But your body is warm enough to function. That alone feels like success here. Around you, morning routines begin. A woman checks the stew pot again. Even after a full night, nothing is wasted. Food is always stretched to its limit. A man tightens straps on his boots. Another checks tools hung along the wall. Everything has a purpose for the day ahead. There is no free time in the modern sense. Even rest is part of survival. The door opens briefly. Cold air rushes in like a warning. Then it shuts again. The room resets. Warmth slowly returns. Outside, the world is still frozen. Snow covers everything in silence. No sound carries far. Even footsteps feel swallowed. You follow someone outside for a moment. The cold hits instantly. Not sharp. Not dramatic. Just absolute. Like the air itself is heavier than you. Breathing becomes work again. Inside felt like life. Outside feels like resistance. You step back quickly. No one is surprised. No one lingers outside longer than needed. The longhouse accepts you back without question. Warmth returns slowly. Not fully. But enough. Enough to continue another day. And that is what matters most here. Not comfort. Not ease. Just continuation. The morning inside the longhouse begins to stabilize. Not with noise. But with repetition. The same movements. The same tasks. The same quiet discipline that keeps everything alive. Someone brings a small wooden bowl of porridge. It is thick and simple. Grain softened in water and heat. Nothing fancy. But it fills the stomach. That is its only job. You take a slow bite. It is warm. Neutral in taste. Almost comforting in its simplicity. Around you, people begin preparing for the day. A man checks a stack of firewood. He counts it without speaking. Every log is mentally accounted for. Every piece has a future. Another person inspects the roof supports. Snow weight is always a concern. Too much pressure above can become dangerous. So the structure is checked often. Quietly. Regularly. Without panic. A child carries small pieces of cloth to a corner. Even children work here. Not as punishment. But as part of life. Everyone contributes. Everyone matters. You notice how little is wasted. Water is reused when possible. Scraps are saved. Even ashes from the fire are kept for cleaning or farming later. Nothing is trash in the modern sense. Everything has a second purpose. Outside, the wind shifts again. The walls respond with a low creak. Not fear. Just adjustment. Like an old animal settling into position. You realize something simple. This house is not just shelter. It is a system. A carefully balanced ecosystem of people, animals, fire, and structure. Everything supports everything else. If one part fails, the rest feels it immediately. That awareness shapes every action here. No one acts carelessly. Because carelessness has consequences. You finish the last of the porridge. Warmth spreads through your body again. Not luxury warmth. Survival warmth. But it is enough. The day has officially started. And in this world, that alone is a victory. The day outside does not change much. Only the shade of gray shifts slightly. Inside the longhouse, life continues at a steady pace. Not fast. Not slow. Just consistent. A man begins working on a broken wooden tool. He sits near the fire for light. Each movement is careful. Wood shavings fall quietly to the floor. Nothing is rushed. Repairing is always cheaper than replacing. That rule guides everything here. You notice a group of people preparing hides. Animal skins are stretched and cleaned. Every step is done with patience. The process takes days. Sometimes longer. But it ensures clothing and shelter for the next season. A woman quietly hums while working. The sound is soft. Almost lost under the crackle of fire. But it gives rhythm to the room. Not music. Just presence. Outside, the wind presses harder for a moment. The walls respond again with a low groan. But they hold. They always hold. That is what they were built for. Thick timber. Packed earth. Layered turf. Everything designed to resist. Not win. Just endure. You stand and walk slowly toward the doorway. A few people glance at you but say nothing. The door opens. Cold rushes in instantly. Your breath tightens. The difference is always shocking. Inside feels like shared survival. Outside feels like isolation. Snow stretches endlessly in every direction. No roads. No clear paths. Only memory and instinct guide movement. You step out for a moment. The silence outside is deeper than expected. Even your own footsteps feel small. Then you return inside quickly. Warmth wraps around you again. Not fully. But enough to remind you why this place exists. The fire is still burning steadily. Someone has already adjusted it. Not too high. Not too low. Perfect balance. You realize something quietly. This life is not built on comfort. It is built on awareness. Every action matters. Every resource counts. Every mistake is remembered by winter. You sit back down. The rhythm of the house continues around you. And for the first time today, you understand what survival really feels like. Evening begins to return earlier than expected. In this world, time never feels equal. Day is short. Night is always long. Inside the longhouse, people prepare without speaking much. The fire is checked again. Wood is added carefully. Not enough to waste. Just enough to keep it alive. The glow spreads slowly across the room. Faces become softer in the orange light. Tiredness shows more clearly now. Work has filled the day. Now the body demands rest. A man enters with snow on his shoulders. He shakes it off near the doorway. The cold vanishes behind him as the door closes. He carries news, but nobody asks immediately. Words are not urgent here. One thing at a time. He sits near the fire first. Warms his hands. Only then speaks quietly to someone beside him. You catch fragments. Nothing dramatic. Just survival updates. Weather. Food. Wood. Everything always circles back to those three. The structure of life is simple here. If those three are stable, everything else can continue. You notice how people prepare for sleep early. Sleeping spaces are adjusted. Blankets are straightened. Children are guided gently into place. No resistance. They are used to this rhythm. Night comes. You lie down again. The wood beneath you feels less uncomfortable now. Familiarity changes everything. The fire is lower than before. Just glowing coals again. The room is dim. Almost completely quiet. Only breathing remains. Slow. Steady. Shared. Outside, the wind continues its endless movement. But it feels distant now. Like it belongs to another world. Your thoughts slow down. Not because you try. But because there is nothing demanding them anymore. No distractions. No noise. Only warmth. Only shelter. Only survival continuing one more night. Your eyes close gently. And the last thing you understand is that here, even darkness has a routine. The longhouse settles into full night again. Everything becomes slower. Even sound feels reduced. The fire is now just a soft pulse of light. Barely moving. Barely alive. But still holding on. A faint creak runs through the wooden beams. It is not a warning. Just the house adjusting itself again. Like it does every night. You hear a soft cough from somewhere across the room. Then silence returns. No one reacts. Small sounds are normal here. The cold outside never truly leaves your mind. Even indoors, it feels close. Like a shadow pressed against the walls. You shift slightly on the sleeping platform. The wool beneath you is rough. But warm enough to stop your body from complaining. That is the only standard that matters here. Someone nearby turns in their sleep. Blankets rustle softly. Then stillness again. The rhythm of the room is steady. Almost hypnotic. Fire. Breathing. Wind. All repeating in slow cycles. You think about how different time feels here. No clocks. No alarms. No notifications. Only darkness telling you when to rest. And light telling you when to wake. It is simple. Almost too simple for the modern mind. But it works. Outside, the wind finally softens. Not because it stopped. But because distance makes it weaker. Inside, warmth gathers slowly again. Not increasing. Just staying. Holding its position against the cold. You begin to feel your thoughts drifting. Less focused. More fluid. Like they are no longer anchored. That is how sleep starts here. Not suddenly. But gently. Like fading sound. The last thing you notice is the fire. Still glowing. Still alive. Refusing to disappear completely. And in that soft orange light, you drift away. Morning returns without announcement. No sound marks its arrival. Just a slow change in the color of darkness. From deep black to cold gray. Inside the longhouse, people begin to wake again. Not all at once. One by one. Like the house itself is breathing them back into the day. The fire is still there. Barely. A few glowing embers hidden under ash. Someone kneels and carefully adds dry wood. The flame responds slowly. Almost politely. No rush. Nothing wasted. You sit up again. Your body feels rested. Not perfectly. But enough. That is the standard here. Around you, movement begins. Simple routines restart. Water is checked. Food is prepared. Tools are gathered. Nothing new. Everything familiar. A man opens a small storage chest. Inside are supplies for the day. He looks at them quietly. Then closes it again. Not much changes from day to day. But everything is still necessary. A child wakes and immediately reaches for a piece of cloth. They are given a small task without words. They accept it. That is normal here. Work is not questioned. It is part of life. You notice how the longhouse feels different in the morning light. Not warmer. Just clearer. Shadows are shorter. Details are easier to see. Repairs in the wood become visible. Scratches. Marks. Old burn stains from the fire. Everything tells a story. Not of luxury. But of endurance. Outside, snow still covers everything. Unbroken. Unchanged. Like time itself paused overnight. A man steps outside briefly. He returns quickly. Cold always wins that exchange. The door closes. Warmth comes back slowly. You realize something again. Life here is not divided into special moments. It is one continuous effort. Day after day. Night after night. Small actions repeated without end. And somehow, it is enough to keep everything alive. The day moves forward slowly. Not because it is calm. But because nothing here can be rushed. Inside the longhouse, people continue their work. Repairing. Preparing. Maintaining. Always maintaining. A man sharpens tools again near the fire. Even tools that are already sharp are checked. Because dullness can happen without warning. Another person organizes dried food stores. Everything is counted. Everything is remembered. Nothing is left to chance. You watch how quiet it all is. No one wastes energy on unnecessary speech. Even conversations are short. Direct. Useful. Silence is not emptiness here. It is efficiency. The fire continues its steady rhythm. Small flames rise and fall. Never too high. Never too low. Perfectly controlled. You notice how often people check it. Not out of fear. Out of respect. Because fire is life. But only when managed correctly. Outside, the wind presses again. The longhouse responds with a low, familiar sound. It is not fear. It is structure doing its job. Holding everything together. A woman passes by you carrying wool. She sits and immediately begins working. No pause. No hesitation. Every moment has purpose. You begin to understand something deeper. There is no free time in the way you know it. Only necessary time. And recovery time. Everything else is survival. The rhythm of the day feels almost endless. Not tiring. Just continuous. Like a loop that never breaks. You look around the room once more. This place is not built for comfort. It is built for endurance. And everyone here understands that without being told. Slowly, the day continues. And nothing breaks. Nothing fails. Everything simply holds. Evening returns again, quieter than before. The light outside fades early, as always. Inside the longhouse, the fire becomes the center of everything. Not just warmth. Not just light. But life itself. People gather closer as the cold begins pressing harder against the walls. Not in panic. Just habit. The same movement every night. A man adds a single log to the fire. He watches it carefully. Waiting for the right moment. Too early wastes wood. Too late wastes warmth. Balance is everything here. A pot is placed over the flame again. Simple food. Simple routine. The smell of cooked grain and smoke fills the air. Familiar now. Comforting in its own rough way. You notice how everyone's movements slow down as the night deepens. Work ends naturally. No announcement. No signal. Just bodies deciding it is time. Children are guided toward sleeping areas. Blankets are adjusted. Feet tucked in. No complaints. They know what comes next. Rest. Across the room, an old man sits quietly near the fire. He stares at it like he has seen 1,000 winters inside that same glow. Maybe he has. His face says everything and nothing at the same time. Outside, the wind grows stronger again. But inside, nothing changes. The longhouse holds firm. Like it always has. Like it always will, as long as people keep working together. You lie back down on the wooden platform. It no longer feels strange. It feels familiar now. Almost natural. The fire dims slowly. Not disappearing. Just resting. Like everything else in this place. Your thoughts begin to slow again. Not because you are tired. But because there is nothing urgent left to think about. Only the rhythm remains. Fire. Breath. Silence. And the long, patient night continuing outside. You realize, just before sleep takes you again. This world does not fight time. It simply survives inside it. The fire is almost gone now. Only a few glowing embers remain under a thin layer of ash. The longhouse is completely still. No movement. No work. No voices. Only breathing. Slow. Even. Shared. Outside, the Arctic wind continues its endless path. It presses against the walls like it always does. But tonight, it feels distant. Less threatening. Almost like background noise. Inside, everything feels smaller now. Not because the space changed. But because your mind has adjusted to it. You lie there on the wooden platform. No comfort like home. No soft mattress. No quiet heater humming in the background. Just wood. Wool. And warmth borrowed from fire and people around you. And yet, it is enough. That thought surprises you. Enough is not something you usually accept. But here, it becomes normal. You think back through everything you've seen. The careful fire. The shared warmth. The endless preparation. The constant repairs. The animals inside the home. The silence that carries meaning. Nothing wasted. Nothing exaggerated. Everything serving a purpose. Survival is not a moment here. It is a system. A rhythm. A quiet agreement between people and nature. Outside, winter does not care. It never has. It never will. But inside this wooden shelter, life continues anyway. Not by winning against the cold. But by refusing to stop because of it. Your eyes grow heavy again. Thoughts slow down. The fire fades further. Not disappearing. Just becoming memory. And before sleep fully takes you, you understand something simple. The Vikings didn't survive because their world was easier. They survived because they accepted that it never would be. And in that acceptance, they found a way to live.